Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Scott Letwin. I'm a trades instructor here at Red Deer College. I've been here for about 8 years, teaching the electrical program. And I kind of got into mind mapping in the last few years, and I found some really exciting results, I guess, with my students and how they've enjoyed it and really embraced it. And I've really kind of targeted more on the entry-level students, the ones that are first coming here because they don't have any expectations from previous instructors of what's going to happen here at RDC. So as soon as I get them involved in that, they just kind of adopt it and think that this is all part of being a trade student. So they don't know any different until they talk to some of their students in the other classes and find out that they're not doing it. So it's kind of been interesting and had some really nice results with that. I guess we'll just get into mind mapping. This is just sort of I gave a course through Con Ed, which is about, well, it's an all-day course. And I'm going to try and shrink it down as concisely as possible in about an hour, and we'll get through it fairly quickly and just try and touch on some of the high points of mind mapping and why it works so effectively with the way our brain works. And again, our brain is just an absolutely marvelous machine. It can do so many things. It works on so many different levels. And again, here's a picture from a book that was entitled A Whole New Mind. And basically it's a view from the back of your head. So this would be your left side of your brain and this would be the right side of your brain. And to try and show you the differences between those, I've got a little bit of a handout here. If you're going to start passing, hopefully good. Yeah, I should have enough. Of what takes place. And so Dr. Sperry, he won a Nobel Prize for his study on the brain. And he did hooked up sensors to different portions of the skull and measured brainwave activity. So whenever they saw different responses, they were able to see what was happening and which portions of the brain really fired at that point. And so if you look at the handout I gave you, certain things like numbers and words, language is primarily and more dominant on the left side of your brain. Analysis, logic, all those kind of things are left brain activities. Now, it's not to say that the right brain doesn't do some of that stuff either. It's just more dominant on the left side. And then on the right side of the brain, you get into your activities like color and images and pictures, music, daydreaming, spatial recognition, where you are in the room, kind of a whole picture view of yourself and your surroundings, and dimension, scaling, that kind of thing, are all found on the right side of the brain, more dominantly. That's not to say that the left brain doesn't handle that kind of stuff either. It's just more pronounced on the right side of the brain. So when we look at the connections that are happening in the brain, those connections are happening left to right. And if you can get more of these synapses firing at the same time, so if you're using words and numbers, but you're also using colors and images, then you're making a connection between that cerebral cortex that goes in the middle of your brain. That's weird. Okay. So daydreaming, that's on your thing. It's a right brain activity. Why do we do it? Why do your students daydream? I'm sure you've seen your students daydreaming, right? Okay. Never? No. This is the daydreaming they're doing? Yeah. I daydreamed extensively. That was my whole problem in elementary school, was that I was known as the daydreamer. And in fact, I was so distracted, or at least they thought I was so distracted, they put a fridge box around my desk to keep me focused. 3 sides, so I could get out the back of it. It wasn't a completely, it was just 3 sides. But that was their solution. But really, daydreaming is just an expression. It's kind of like your right brain is screaming to be active, participate in the learning that's happening. And so if we can engage both sides of the brain and not just have text in a document that we're giving to our students, then we can engage them in whole brain learning. Our brains are naturally associative, and the more things that we can stimulate, the more associations we can make. Obviously, you know what, you're making associations already. You saw these two images. You made associations, didn't you? It's easy to do, right? That's what our brain wants to do. It's such a natural process for our brain to do that. Now, I talked to you about color and images. Now, when we look at, this is what we refer to as an ILM in the apprenticeship system, and they get about, at the beginning of the year, between 30 to 45 of these, depending on which year and what the curriculum is. Black and white. Lots of text, lots of bullet points, not a lot of pictures. They do have a few pictures, but they're not very interesting and not very exciting to look at. So do you think they're engaged when they're reading these documents? Not likely. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you, Sam? So it's not an engaging type of learning that they're doing, and it can be very dry. And so we have to try to do something that gets both sides of the brain engaged. Now again, mentioned that your brains are naturally associative. So on the left, so it's supposed to be easier. Left side, obviously we've got the Nike symbol. You obviously associate, anytime you see a swoosh like that, you're going to associate that with Nike. The right side, Apple computers. You know, they have those trademarks. We associate that, and it's very easy for our brains to do that. And it's a split-second thing, isn't it? Didn't take you a long time. Sometimes, if you haven't seen that image for a while, you got to think about what that is. But again, with our propaganda, we know exactly what those are. What about this? What's the association that you have with this? You're hungry? Yeah, it's getting close to lunch. Okay, they're good. Yeah, they're really good. My son loves scalloped potatoes. And so I have a whole story that goes with this, but all I see is one image. And all that image does is brings back a story for me. And it actually has an association for my son. Every time we have a cooked ham, my wife makes scalloped potatoes. So those two smells go together, hand in hand. Those two, you know, if the scalloped potatoes are cooking and he could smell that, then he associates that we're having ham for dinner. So one day my wife had made scalloped potatoes, and for some other reason, I have no idea why, we didn't have the ham. We had some sort of other dish with it. My son walks in from outside, playing outside. He smells the scalloped potatoes, and he was so excited. We're having ham, you know, and we weren't. So it's amazing how quickly we make those associations and how long they'll actually stay. And so, again, just something as simple as a scent can cause us to associate with other things, right? Now, how many here would say that they're a linear thinker? They think? Yeah, quite a few. Always get that. It's more of a male thing. You want to say, I'm a linear thinker. Right? What's the most linear thing you can think of? Numbers, tape measure, right? Numbers on a tape measure, a timeline, right? Okay, so just close your eyes for a second and imagine that you're 17 and you're at a family dinner, and hey, you're not closing your eyes. And one of your second cousins that you never ever see walks into the meal or the family dinner that you're having, and they've got a particular perfume on, or cologne, depending on whether you're male or female. So just imagine that they're the opposite sex, and you smell this perfume or cologne. And then a year later you have another family dinner, but another cousin comes in and has that scent on, that particular perfume cologne. And you remember that from your other cousin, and you realize that, okay, it was a gift from grandma, had given them this, both the same cologne. And then about 5 years down the road, you're at a party. And you're standing by the door, and in walks this attractive person, and they've got that exact same perfume cologne on. And it just catches your attention, and you've got to talk to this person. You end up having a conversation with them. This conversation lasts for hours, and you start to fall in love with this person. You date, and for that whole period of your dating, that perfume or that cologne is predominant. And you end up spending the rest of your life with this person. Now it's 20 years later, and all of a sudden you smell that perfume or that cologne again. What do you think when you smell that again? Which memory are you going to associate with that smell, that scent? The one that's going to have the strongest emotional tie, right? Not the first time, right? You don't go, oh, okay, I smelled that in 1978, and then again in 1979, and then in 83. You know, your brain doesn't work like that. It's going to be triggered by whatever gives you the greatest emotional response. Now, what do you think is going to give you the greatest emotional response? This word or this picture? Same thing, right? Right, the picture. Okay. Now what if it was this picture instead? Right? Same thing, right? So which is going to give you the greatest emotional response? And so if you can engage, and again, what is this? Right brain activity, right? This is left brain. But they both mean the same thing. And so again, if you can take that image, that word, which really, it is a word, right? But somebody says banana, you don't think B-A-N-A-N-A. You don't think the letters, you think the image. And so that's really where we're trying to go with this. And that's what mind mapping is so good. It does that for you. Again, sorry, you'll have to excuse me. We're going to do a little exercise here just to show you how associative your brain really is. I've got some paper here, and hopefully everybody's got pens. I've got extra pencils and stuff. So. Start here. You can start passing them down that way. Called a Bloom exercise. So you start with your central image, which, again, we'll get into more of the rules of mind mapping, but this just gets you a good start. So you're going to start with a central circle, square, doesn't matter whatever image you want there. Just a blank circle, oval. And then off of that you're going to have, what do we got here? 10 branches. 10 little branches coming off of that. So when everybody's ready, we will give you a word to put in that central image. And then you're going to start going off of each branch with just one word that you associate with that center word. All right. And then we're going to look at our results and see how many people ended up with the exact same word. And we'll see how unique you really are. All right, so the word that we're going to have is the word run. Run. R-U-N. Run.
Just one word?
Just one word off of those branches. So 10 words. Eventually you'll have 10 words around the outside. But on each branch, just put one word. As fast as you can. You don't have to give it any thought. Just as soon as it pops in, write it down. Another thought pops in, write it down. You're not being judged by the words that you pick. It's just picked. Your brain is just doing it. So just grab and go with it. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's try and split you off into groups of 3. So 3 and 3, 3 and 3 and 2. Sorry. And just see how many words you had in common with each other, if you had any. So, oh, you're supposed to go over with, yeah. And see if you had any of the same words. Two. Okay.
Shoes, walk, kind of like. Yeah, so we are fairly unique in
Where we were more, in emotion too, I think, right? Women maybe as a gender.
Okay. All right, so let's take a look at some of the words that you had in common. So group 1, did you have any words in common?
I don't think we taught anybody with all of them, but the same type of concept as in racing, like a run or training,
Okay.
track and field. So kind of the same concept, but not the same word.
All right, so as the sport, the activity,
Yeah.
right? Did anybody else have that, like marathon or jogging? Jogging, some people had that. Okay. Shoes.
we all had shoes.
You all had something to do with shoes. Okay. But then you had some very unique words too, right? That more fit with your life experience. Yeah. Did it? Yeah. So whatever your experience is going to be, that's what your brain is going to pop into, right? Because your brain is based on associations. Your associations are made from your experiences. Just like that perfume that you smell. If somebody else smelt that and didn't have any of those, it would be meaningless, right? So again, it's based on our associations. Now we're going to do another one that's very similar to this. It's called the flow exercise. And again, I just gave you kind of a sample here. I'd like you to kind of do, this is 5 boxes, but if you could do 8, maybe 10, like a chain. And this is a really cool one because this gets, really sees where your brain will go in steps. Now, if you've ever daydreamed, if you're daydreaming right now, can you get your attention? Have you ever daydreamed and maybe a bit at a lecture or some sort of seminar, and wondered how your brain got to that location. Why are you in Hawaii? And then you kind of retrace your thinking steps back, and it's amazing, you know, some word in that the speaker had said triggered, maybe he said the word trumpet. Now, why would I be in Hawaii? Oh. And again, actually, this was a real life experience. I actually ended up thinking about Puerto Vallarta. And there was something about a guy in Hawaii. And it didn't make any sense, but really my thought was that, okay, well, the trumpet took me to Hawaii because my parents have a good friend who lives in Hawaii. He's a trumpet player. And in fact, he played for Elvis's band for 6 months. He was on the road with Elvis. And, you know, it just took me to all sorts of things. And then it took me to the fact that I hadn't been to Hawaii, but my parents went to Hawaii. And then they also went to Mexico without me one time. And then when they were in Mexico, in Puerto Vallarta, the airline that they were with went under and took me to all these different scenarios. And I was like, how did my brain go there? But really, it was all these associations. And so that's what we're going to see with this flow exercise is where will your brain go when I give you one word? Where will that take you? And so what I want you to do is, in a non-judgmental way, don't think, oh, that's stupid. Just write it down. Just write the next thought. It could be a couple of words, but just write it down. And it's kind of interesting to see where your associations lie. Okay? So the word I want to give you for that, to start the chain, is work. Okay. You guys seem very academic. So.
I started academic and
Yeah.
ended up at home.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, yeah. No, the word work obviously has a lot of different connotations. Some people will take it with their career. You know, it might be at home. You know, working at home, doing yard work, and it just depends on what's happening in that particular moment. And that what happened in the last hour will probably dictate what you're going to write down in that. Okay, and so. You ended up there? Yeah. I think I got that word and I ended up with chocolate milk for some reason. I don't know how, but the words and I just wrote it down. But it's amazing, you know, what your brain is doing and associating. And I think a lot of you guys are really thinking through this and trying to put the right word because you think that should fit with work. But what you want to do is associate from the last word that you wrote and just keep going with that.
That's pretty linear thinking.
Is it? Well, you kind of went around in a circle there. It's not really linear thinking because your brain is just going from one thought process to the next process. And that could happen on the right, it could happen on the left. So now if you've got that same piece of paper that had the word run on it, flip it over there, and what you can do is just take the first branch that you went off, the first word, and do a little bit of that flow exercise with that. So whatever that first word, whether it was sneakers or jog, just go off that and then see what kind of associations you come off of that word. Don't go back to the center image and associate with the word run. Go off of that first word and then go off of the next word you wrote. So if the word was marathon, right, then maybe you want to go Boston. And then the word Boston is going to trigger the Bruins, or Celtics, or whatever the sports team is there. And then that's what you're going to see with that. And that's kind of the exercise. And that's sort of the leadings of mind mapping, except obviously with mind mapping, we're going to do it with a little more purpose. We're going to try and achieve some results that you can use that is useful. Right? Obviously just writing the word run in there and going off in 10 different directions isn't especially helpful, but it does show you how your brain works. All right, so let's get into mind maps. And again, we don't have a huge amount of time to spend on this, but I do have some sheets here. Just pass these around. It's a rubric, plus on the back side of it, or depending on how you flip it, front or the back, shows you an example of a mind map. So this is a rubric I give to my students, and it gives them a basic idea and understanding of how to create a mind map and the types of things that I'm looking for them to create this mind map of the module. So again, there's some examples on, why does that have to keep doing that? Some examples of mind maps that my students have created. There's some up here that I've created. And they're all based on their modules. So what they're doing is taking a mind map, a module like this, and trying to create something that looks like this. So I'll just pass this around and you guys can see. This is one I've made. But that's with software, I've done that. But it's a one-page diagram with color and images, some words. So again, left and right are engaged. So I've got my words, I've got numbers. I've got another one here. I don't have the module that goes with it. But again, this one's got lots of formulas on it even. And the students just love that one because it helps them. They can see everything on one page, and they find it very, very useful to do the one I use, no, it's not. But there is a free program that you can get. What they do is they give you the awesome program for 7 days. It's kind of like a drug dealer, and and then they take it away, all the features, so you don't get you hooked. But there is quite a few free programs. They're just not as colorful, and this one's very organic, the one I use, whereas a lot of the mind mapping programs are very rigid, whereas I can take the branches and I can curve them to whatever I want. I can actually freehand draw them with the mouse, so whatever shape I want, that's what they look like. So it's like you're doing it by hand, except you're not. That's what I call mine, because I upload these to a program, to a website called biggerplate.com, and it's called a mind mapping library. There's like 65,000 users worldwide that contribute to this, and then everybody can just kind of go and look, and you can download all of them for free. So you upload them for free and download them for free. Biggerplate.com. So I just went to the conference in San Francisco March 20th. I left on the 19th, which was my 20th anniversary, which wasn't, there was some consternation there. And it was really interesting. And that Bigger Plate, I asked the founder of it, I said, where did you come up with that name, Bigger Plate? And him and his cohorts that had developed this mind mapping library, one of them had to leave. He said, oh, just got too much on my plate. And his friend said, well, you just need a bigger plate. And then that's where the name came from. So it drives you nuts until you find out why something is the way it is, right? Okay, so this is the kind of the basic structure of a mind map, and then somebody did a mind map of the principles, right? So you want to keep it as organic as possible. Now you'll notice that all of the examples of my students' work there on the table, all of it's organic. I don't tell them about software. And when I do my classes, I use the whiteboard extensively, and I have a pouch full of very colorful whiteboard markers. So I don't show them my computer done mind maps until like week 6 or something like that, because I really want them to create them. What I do is I show them these principles and these laws basically day 1, day 2. Even my orientation presentation is done via mind map. So I'll show them how to do this, give them the rubric, and then each lesson I do a mind map for that lesson early on. And I will just show them how to do that. And you'll see them. They know that they've got to do these mind maps on the module. I'm lecturing from the module, but again, doing it as a mind map. And they'll copy mine. So the first few mind maps that come in look very similar to mine, which is fine. Then as the next week comes in, I still continue to do mind maps on the whiteboard, but I leave a lot of material off. Some blank branches and things like that, and make sure that they have to fill that in, and start to wean them off of just copying what I'm doing on the board. And then you get a lot. Then all of a sudden the variations really start to come in from student to student. It's kind of interesting to see. Okay, so again, let's just go through the basic principles. Again, organic, so again, that's why the hand-drawn ones are better as far as getting that organic feel to it. 1 word per branch. Now that's a Tony Bazan. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that name, but he's the creator of mind maps. He's British, but he studied at UBC, and I think he finished up in about 1970 and came up with this concept of mind maps. It's interesting how he did it, but you want to keep the branch as long as the word, and that'll indicate that. You want to use colors, and you want to have at least 3 different colors in here if you can possibly do that with your central image, and then each branch would be different colors. And you can use those colors to stimulate ideas. So if you were doing like a plan, an agenda, or some sort of a planning process with the mind map, if it was really important, those would be like in red, right? Something that can kind of wait could be yellow, and if it can be pushed off to the end of the project, then it could be a green branch. And you can use those kind of color codes to help you with that. The more images you can have, the better, because picture's worth 1,000 words. So the more images that you can have, that's going to help you. And again, an image can generate a lot of different emotions, whereas just a simple 1 word branch isn't going to give you that kind of stimulus. Words, again, they generate the image, the ideas, but you want to make sure that you don't have to use every single word. So again, it's kind of almost contradictory, 1 word per branch. And again, then they're saying, well, you can use kind of multiple words there. important, not alone. Like, you don't have to use the word the and or those kind of words, those small conjunction type words, because your brain will automatically just fill those in anyway. Right? It's like that. Sometimes you don't even have to put vowels in words and you know what that word means. Same thing with those short words. You don't necessarily have to put that in there. Sometimes you could just write the word, and if you were not supposed to do that, you could just put a red circle around it with a line through it. Okay, don't do that. And then that gives you more of an image, visual stimulation. Okay? Tony Buzan kind of likes the idea that you want to make sure you print, because there is a key. Even when he was studying linear note-taking, he found that people that printed their notes linear style were able to retain more information and be able to go back and read that more clearly. And then when he even broke it down further, people that used all capitals, uppercase letters, retain more information. So he likes to have it so that when you do your branches, and again, this example isn't even perfect according to Tony Buzan, the word one should be all uppercase, and word length, that should all be uppercase. Okay. Now, again, Tony Buzan has some rules, and they're quite rigid, but lots of people are saying, well, don't need to do that. Now, I can't. Okay. So we have these laws, rules, principles, and again, it's just to get you to start on the right track of making a proper mind map. But do they matter? Well, some of them do. Getting more color involved and images involved is going to help you with the mind mapping process. Now that one word per branch, and again, you've probably seen the ones I just passed around there. They actually had definitions on there for the motors. That's not one word per branch. It'd be pretty hard to get that whole definition of what one of those motor parameters was in one word. It would probably be almost too hard to do that. It would make it almost frustrating to do that. So you can break the rules. They're just there to kind of give you guidelines. I wouldn't even call them rules. I would say guidelines would be a better word. And so again, there's other authors, and I'll show you some of them, that have said, you know what, that's too rigid. Tony Buzan has his ideas of why that works, but there's probably better arguments for why you should include some more text on there. Okay. I don't know why this is not working now. Okay. Well, we don't have enough time for this. We're going to make a mind map of all the uses. Actually, yeah, let's do it. You got time. It don't take that long. We don't need to spend hours and hours. And again, you don't have color because you've just got pens here. So just take a piece of paper, maybe that same one you had, and you could just take a portion of it. Again, create your central image. Sorry. I'm going to have to edit that out. Take that central image for your mind map and call it uses of mind maps in the center, and then just go off in different directions. And again, we're going to cover some of those. I just want to see if you think of different ones or the same ones that we're going to cover here in a bit. All right, so we probably got quite a few already generated there. So what kind of ideas did you come up with for uses of mind maps there? Sure, Sam, and then
I was thinking about the hard concepts that I have getting across to students. The welding machines, the electricity, one that I have tried this without any training or any, just tried it, and it seemed to work for some of the students. Math problems, hard concepts, the visual learners that need to look at something other than text.
yeah.
So I felt like back to my teaching stuff.
Mhm.
Like that's like a lot of the student related, you know, and you want them to really get deeper into remembering the meat of heavy duty concepts. So
Yep.
in nursing we do use case scenarios and we do some kind of mapping, but I feel like there's always room to grow in that skill
Yep.
and get all of these ideas.
Yeah,
How
just,
do we do
just
that?
have a magazine article on nursing.
Okay.
Cal.
But
Get to-
the one I just wanted to comment on too is for as far as faculty, when we have to come together, we work on teams for different projects.
Yep.
I mean, and we have all these different ideas. Why not use mind mapping, especially on new projects that, you know, who knows, where do we start?
Yeah, excellent for project planning. What did you?
That's a similar thing that occurs to me in terms of even if I'm working by myself.
Yeah.
So often I'm spinning around
Mhm.
thinking all these things, and I might write a list or I might sort of start into research. But starting with mind mapping would be a really great way to
Yeah.
do that and organize it.
I'll just touch on that while we're still there. The great thing about mind mapping is you start in the center of your page. Right? With a linear list, where do you start? Top, and you start working your way down, right? And then once you get to the bottom, what do? You flip the page over. You don't see the stuff on the other page. Sometimes that's a bit of a hindrance. But what if you have a thought that doesn't really fit at the top, and you don't know where it fits just yet? Right? It's like, how many times have we done that? We've made a linear list, and then went, oh, that fits more up here, doesn't it? Yeah. And so then you're trying to, yeah, copy and paste. Or if you're on a whiteboard or a piece of paper like this, right? And you're going here, you know, you're doing idea generation. And you start listing the things, and maybe, you know, just depending on how you break this out, might look like an outline. But you can have this idea, this idea, this idea, and then you start down here with a new topic. But then once you start working in here, you realize that something should have been up here. You don't have room anymore, and it starts to get, you start to kind of almost crowd yourself out. When you go with a mind map, you start with your central image here, and then you go off this topic number 1, right? I don't even know how to spell topic. That was supposed to be 1. And you can start working on that. But then if you have something, somebody throws something out, or even yourself, right? You're like, okay, well, oh, that was really important. I don't want to forget that. What ends up happening is if we have the linear list and we're thinking of some things that down the road, we say, okay, well, I'll get to that when I get to section 2 or section 3 of my plan. And by the time we get that might be half an hour later, that idea is gone. Whereas with a mind map like this, if you all of a sudden have this idea, because what is our brain doing? Associations. Makes these associations really quickly. Well, I don't have to wait. I just say, oh, okay, well, let's just go down here, and I don't even have to call it topic 3 or put any order to it. I just have to say, you know, this is random thought, okay? And I just write it down and I capture it. And it doesn't matter where it fits, because there really isn't any structure that says that I can't just add a branch here or add a branch there and just go with that. So that makes it really, really nice that way, because it doesn't limit you, and because we get in that kind of that pattern. We've always been associated with that pattern, right? We read from the top to the bottom, flip the page, top to the bottom, flip the page. And we get into conditioning ourselves to think that that's how we have to make a document, a plan, right, if that's how we're going to be doing it. So we can get out of that mold. It takes a while. It's really interesting. I just had a study from that Bigger Plate organization, and they interviewed thousands of people that mind map. And the highest population of mind mappers were in their late 30s to 40s, somewhere in there. The 20-something crowd isn't doing it, and it's because it's not being taught in schools. And it's really, people realize that they need to do something better or a more useful tool, and it takes them a while of struggling with different avenues of learning, brainstorming sessions, things like that, that finally they go, you know what, I like this works, and they stick with it. But it doesn't happen until, years down the road, where they realize that there's something better out there to learn from. Okay, so there's other things, like I saw study aids. Again, that's where I kind of come in with my mind mapping. Brainstorming, anybody have that? Which is kind of really useful. To-do lists even. Right?
That's nice, like for students, so like in general, there's students, so they got their personal life, they've got their study life, so it gives you an idea of time management.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how they study, and what's allocated for life, what's for work, family, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Time management can really help you with that. And you can actually dedicate branches to higher priority stuff. Yes?
I think it would really help if you were studying, because to me, like if you're putting one pamphlet on one page, when you're sitting down to study or prepare for something, it's all very simplified right there, and the most important points are there. So it would help you study, it would be clear,
Yep.
it would be catchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's that mind map there. That's what we refer to as a mega mind map.
I'd be curious to see, when you study, like I don't know if you're a thinker, I'm a lot, like
No, you're not.
more of a random thinker now. And I'm looking at this,
No such
when
thing.
you study, and you think, okay, it's right there on that sheet, right at that third last line from the bottom. I can't think of it on the test,
Yeah.
but I know where it is. I'm wondering if this would actually increase success with students.
I don't have any empirical data to help me with that, but there is other people that have done research. I don't have enough of my students have done it yet to say whether it boosts their marks up, but they sure appreciate it. And I had one of my...
Word retrieval, right?
Mhm.
You're in your brain, but it's
And the colors really help with memory. And if you can kind of place those things on a one piece of paper, then it really helps you retrieve that information.
How about for assessment?
Assessment?
Is that something you would use for assessment, or even just informal maybe, or
It could be, definitely.
to have an idea of the student's understanding of a topic?
Yeah, I just read on a blog, one guy was using mind maps for exit interviews to capture all of the stuff that happened in an exit interview. And because usually in an exit interview, it's not really, you ask them a question about, what your time here and stuff, or things that you could do differently. But as they're doing that whole exit interview process, they may go, oh, and then you can put that back up where on branch 1, right? When they, oh, something I forgot to tell you, and then you can just add that into branch 1 or 2 or wherever that new piece of information fits. So it really works good for that kind of, like you said, an assessment, which an exit interview would be, right? Very similar to that. Okay, so there's lots of different uses that you can use mind mapping for. I even did mine. Trip planning was really good. I did a conference in Florida, and I did a branch for each of the days that I was going to be doing stuff. And then I left blanks, right? Because we all do PD, right? And we've got to keep track of all of our expenses and stuff like that. So I left a breakfast branch and a little blank there so that I could write the total in on it after. So I had everything there. I had all my flight information, everything all on one piece of paper. So it worked really.
Have your students switch up their mind maps and share them to see, okay, like, did they make sense? How does someone else do?
No, I haven't really done that. A lot of times your mind maps won't make sense to other people unless you really make them specifically, like I've made some of mine specifically for public content, right? you usually include quite a bit more information. I've had people, note taking is another way of using mind maps. Oh, we're just about out of time. People have said, well, how would I capture the speaker's presentation word for word? Well, you're not going to create it word for word, but even they were curious as to, would my mind map reflect their outline even? So if they were using a linear outline, would my mind map make sense as you went around and looked at that? Probably not. Even your linear notes wouldn't, right? Because the whole point of taking notes is for you. So you're only going to write down the stuff that resonates with you. So some of the stuff in a speaker's presentation might not mean anything to you, so you probably wouldn't include that even in your linear notes. So there's really no reason that your mind map would have to match his. And if two people were sitting there taking notes mind map wise, it's quite likely their notes wouldn't look anything, or their mind map wouldn't look anything alike. And that's what makes us unique. Okay, so we can do a hand-drawn, computer-aided. Here's one I did hand-drawn on leadership principles. Here's another one that I did on the 7 habits of highly effective people, Stephen Covey, in a computer. iMind Map is the program I used. All right, studying, obviously summarizing, memory aids, keywords and phrases, those are things you're going to use. Here's one my son did. I'm just going to quickly go through here. Local government. He had a bunch of flashcards and he was getting so frustrated. He hates studying with my wife, for one thing, because she's pretty hard on him. So I said, hey, why don't we take a break? I'll bring my laptop up and I'll open up the mind mapping software and we'll work together on this. He pulled a 98 off on this exam. Now I can't say because I don't know how he would have done if it hadn't, because I don't have any kind of baseline. But he did really, really well on this exam. And he, you know what, he enjoyed doing this. And that's probably key to a lot of this. So if people are enjoying that, that's a great process. And that's what I found with my students, is they came up with their mind maps and they were like, is this good? Like they were so proud of them. It's like, what is the strongest emotional tie that we have? A mother to a newborn baby, right? That's something you created. I'm not trying to say mind maps are babies, but or equate them. They're not quite the same, but it is something that the student created. They feel really proud of it, and when they can have that emotional tie to that image that they've drawn, that's great. Okay, note taking, we've already talked about that. You don't include a lot of words on there, because if you're trying to capture information, you don't have time because the speaker's moving on, right? Okay, don't have time for that. Brainstorming. I was going to get you guys to do something, but we have no time for that. Brainstorming. Have you guys ever read a book by Susan Cain? I actually got to see her, so it was really, really, really nice. She wrote a book called Quiet, and it's about introverts versus extroverts. Very interesting book. Mind mapping works really good. If you're in a brainstorming session with a group full of people, how many here would classify themselves as introverts or extroverts, right? You don't need to put up your hands. But what ends up happening in a brainstorming session? A few people, yeah. The extroverts, oh, I got an idea, and they just blurt stuff out. So if you're doing a linear list, what ends up happening to those extroverts' ideas? Where do they go? They go at the top, right? Where does the top usually indicate? Best idea, right? Hey, that's the top of the list. So if you do it in a mind map, it's nice because you can just go off, branch one. So we come up with ideas. So maybe our brainstorming session is campus management has to figure out why, or what are we going to do for parking? So they got a bunch of people in the room coming up with ideas to solve maybe the parking crisis. Well, they go off here, and we've got a bunch of extroverts in the room, and they go, oh, I got this idea, let's build a parkade. So parkade 1 goes over there. Another guy goes, well, maybe if we encourage more bike riding. Okay, well, he could go there, you know, and some of the ideas might be just crazy. And if we wrote them in a linear list, those crazy ideas would end up near the top, right? Whereas the introverts kind of, they'll sit back and they'll kind of wait until the extroverts are all done their talking. And they usually have really good ideas because they're quiet and they think and they reflect on stuff. Now you don't have to give those introverts ideas. They don't end up on the bottom of the list. You can just put them right underneath that one. And extrovert's idea goes over here, introvert's idea goes over here, and that kind of thing. And it doesn't necessarily put any hierarchy to the ideas. Whereas a linear list would definitely do that, or at least it gives the impression of doing that, right? Okay, so here's some resources that you guys can look up on your own. Okay, Mind Map book. That was the one by Tony Bazan and his brother Barry. And as Barry got a very little, poor Barry. Must be. Tony Bazan is the extrovert. Learn with Mind Maps. That's a new one that I just discovered. And it's written by, her name is Michelle Mapman. How coincidental is that? I don't know. Maybe she changed her name just to write the book. I don't know. Idea Mapping. It's published by Jamie Nast. Actually, I spent a session with her down in Florida. Very good. And she's the one that helps you to kind of, in the first few chapters, keeps you on those rigid rules that Tony Bazan has established, and then kind of says, hey, that's not working for you, let's do this. And so it's good that way. Very easy to read. This one is called Using Mind Maps. It's actually an online magazine. I was published in it this month, so that's definitely a reason why you should subscribe. So it's in the Google Play Store and the Apple Store, iTunes. A Whole New Mind, that's a really good one about right brain thinkers. And then the other one is Creative Confidence. And that's another reason people, they think mind mapping is great, right? But I can't do it because I'm not creative enough. I can tell you I'm probably the worst drawing type guy you'll ever meet. But if you can draw a stick man, that's good enough, right? But it helps you to be more confident. Oh, everybody get your cards in there. Sharon wants to make a draw. You guys want to win? Okay. So there's definitely blogs and websites that you can go to get information on that. There's free online software, a lot of it, lots of different ones, lots for the iPad. I use iMindMap on my iPad, and it's quite good, and even free. So it's even, you only get a few central image templates to go with, but it's good enough for a lot of stuff that you're going to do. Okay. And then there's lots on, if you've got a Google account, you can go on to their Google Chrome store, and there's a bunch there. There's MindMap and Connected Mind. MindJet has an app. Mindomo has a nice one, but again, it's very static. Like when you go up at the branch, it just does a nice straight line, and then when you do the next one, it's straight again, and it's not. Whereas with the iMindMap, it's very organic, and that was the whole reason. Tony Bazan was dead against software for the longest period of time until they came up with one that actually felt more like he was doing something with a pen. And then that's yeah. Yeah, and that's a crazy thing about our brains. They say there's actually more connections between neuron to neuron and synapses and stuff than there are atoms in the universe. So that's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's a big universe, but they're saying that's what they estimate, right? So if you can think of that's connections. That's not actual brain cells, but that's brain cell to brain cell, and then that brain cell making that connection to so many different brain cells around it. And then that each one of those, it's kind of like those old telephone switchboards. You grab here and go to there, and you can make so many connections. So again, all of those associations in our brain are just phenomenally powerful. So we want to make sure we're taking advantage of it, and that's what we're trying to do, I guess, with more of this, great software, hand-drawn images, things that we can do to enhance the learning. That's what we really where we want to go with that. And so, again, that's just some of the just wanted to show you one little last thing. So yesterday, I was in a presentation about storytelling. And so our homework was to go in the evening, think about somebody that influenced us, a teacher that we've had. And I thought I had it all figured out in my head until I got back for the second day, and then that morning I was like, I didn't want to talk about that person anymore. I thought of somebody better. So I had about 5 minutes to get something done, and this is what I did. Just a quick sketch like this, and this was enough for me to speak in front of a group. I don't know how good I did. How good? Are you okay? And the thing about associations, the two individuals that spoke, that are here with me today, their stories were emotional for me, and they're the ones that I remember because they had emotion tied to them. So anytime we can get our students to have a good feeling about what they're doing and happy, they're going to take way more away from that. So again, if they can incorporate some humor into their pictures and images on that mind map, if they can be proud of those, they're going to take away a lot more, and they're going to learn a lot more and retain a lot more, and that's really where we're trying to go with that, right? So any questions for me? I guess we got to get for lunch here. Sorry, I ran a little longer than I hoped.